what we're going to talk about briefly before we get to the hackathons is Utah's approach to policy making around AI. And wow, I see a lot of people are like, oh, policy, all right, I'm done. But actually, this is incredibly important. Incredibly important. Governor Cox talked about this. In order for us to feel like, for our companies to be able to thrive, to have certainty, to ensure we're protecting the public at the same time. So I'm going to explain a little bit about what we've done here in this realm, what Utah has done to really lead out. And so if we just want to go to that next slide, Melanie. So what we did, there were a few of us, Representative Moss, Senator Collimore, I saw Barclay Burns in the room, a few of us kind of got together about 1.5 years ago and said, what's our approach going to be for AI in Utah? There was so much excitement and anxiety building, and we knew we had to do something. And there was a little bit of a sense from some policymakers across the country of like throwing up their hands. We don't even know what to do. We're going to wait and see. And Utah didn't want to take that approach. So what we decided is we wanted to have 3 key objectives in our AI tech policy. The first, and maybe the most important, is we wanted to make sure that we could foster innovation. Foster innovation. We've been talking about that. You just heard from incredible innovators just now at this panel, and we so appreciate all that they're doing. We want to make sure that's happening in our state. We also want to protect the public. There are anxieties about these new technologies for a reason. And we've heard some of those concerns, privacy, bias, those kinds of things. But we also, maybe most importantly, we wanted to have an active way to observe and learn what was happening so we could make good decisions as policymakers. So how were we going to do that? Well, we set up this Office of AI Policy. So we can move to the next slide, Melanie. And this is kind of our policy learning lab. Maybe you've heard of that. The governor referenced it. Really what this is doing is a couple different things. First, it has this learning lab function, which it will basically, the lab or the office will select certain areas that are perhaps problematic, that people are thinking about, and like, I'm not sure about this, the privacy issues, the bias issues. How do we handle that? So this office will proactively go after those kinds of policy issues, study them, bring in experts, bring in the public, and then make recommendations to our legislative partners so they can decide what to do with it, pass something into law, whatever they want to do. So that is one way that we can sort of stay on top of things, engage the community, just like you today, to be able to get good policy, stay as agile as possible. We know things are racing forward. We won't be able to stay on top of all of it, but we can stay on top of some of it. And then the second piece is actually, I think, really exciting, and some of you may know about this already, is this ability to offer regulatory relief or mitigation. That's going to help us to learn as well and help to companies to innovate. The idea behind here is that you can come to this new office as a company, as an AI company, and say, you know, I'm experimenting with this model. There's a lot of risk here. Generative AI is unpredictable, if nothing else, right? And we want to be able to do these amazing things and serve customers in this amazing way, but we're worried about bumping up against regulation and regulatory action. So you can come to the office and they can work with the relevant regulators, most of whom actually reside in the Department of Commerce, and work out an agreement with your organization that we will either agree to cap penalties if something goes awry or simply exempt you from a law. And this not only allows innovation for companies in our state, but it helps us to learn where there are problematic areas, maybe regulations that need to be cleared out, maybe new regulations that need to be put in, whatever the case may be. So that's kind of the idea about our new Office of AI Policy. We're really excited about this. This has been a really innovative approach to policy making. And I'm going to turn the time over to Representative Jeff Moss. You heard from him a minute ago, introducing the governor. He's going to talk a little bit about how he's been hearing from his colleagues across the country about how innovative this idea is. And then after that, we're going to bring up, finally, Dr. Zach Boyd, who is the director of our new Office of AI Policy. He's a PhD in mathematics. He actually understands the technologies at a very deep level. He comes to us from BYU. Utah is it's a great gift for all of us to be able to have Zach's leadership. And he's going to talk more about specifically our learning agendas, what we're looking at now, the regulatory mitigation program, and then introduce our hackathons for the rest of the day. So let's turn it over to Jeff. Thanks so much.
Thank you. I'll just start by giving a little shout out to Margaret. And I say this often about her. We are incredibly lucky in the state of Utah to have somebody with Margaret's technical knowledge, her passion, excitement, and also desire to be innovative. We talk to people across the state, across the country, as Margaret was saying, and many of them are saying, well, our Commerce Department or whoever the regulatory agency, they're the ones that are trying to shut everything down. And I love the fact that we have a state where somebody's thinking, how do we put the right guardrails in place to make sure we're protecting the public, but how do we really drive innovation? And even when we first started working on this bill together, Senator Collimore, who, by the way, he was going to be the one doing this little speech. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to make it. He had a conflict come up. But he and I and Margaret sat down and said, hey, we need to really get our arms around this. That doesn't happen in a lot of states. You don't get the executive, House and Senate and just say, let's try to figure this out together. And then, as she mentioned, we brought in a number of individuals. We had some of the brightest academics. We had some amazing practitioners, entrepreneurs coming together. And we went out and talked to a lot of people. We were talking to experts all over the world and asking them, what is it that we're missing? What do we need to still think about? And we went through a lot of different iterations. And through that process, we were able to build a lot of goodwill. A lot of people were buying into the process. And even at the end, I don't know if Greg Wisenant's still here. Is Greg here? Greg. Okay, he's done an amazing job in helping put all of this together, working with Margaret. We went out and did a number of focus groups, and we talked to tons of industry people and walked through all of these different ideas and really tried to get that feedback from, we wanted to do something that the AI community would also be excited about. So as we've talked about this across the country, we've had a number of states try to do something. It's kind of amazing. When we ran the bill, we were a little bit, we wanted to be the first, we wanted to do something. What blew my mind is we've had hundreds of bills across the country that have been tried to be put into law. Most of them have failed. People cannot get their arms around this. There's a tracking tool that we follow every day almost and say, what are they doing? What's new? What we did find out is that a lot of states are looking to Utah. So we actually have now been asked to present at a number of conferences where they're starting to use this as model legislation. And so things that we're doing here are hopefully going to affect the nation in terms of what we're going to do on AI policy, but making sure we're doing it in the right way, protecting the public, but driving innovation. So anyway, Margaret, thank you again for giving me the chance, and I'll turn the time over to Zach.
Okay, well, thank you all for coming. Really, this is amazing to see you all together. So I thought I would just use your valuable time very carefully and make it very clear what happens if you want to be engaged with either of the functions of our office, which are the regulatory mitigation and the learning lab. So I'm going to go super concrete with an example here. So, and I'm just going to say up front, both of my examples are for mental health because I've interviewed hundreds and hundreds of people for mental health in the last few months. You'll know why by the end of the talk. So, but here's one example. This is kind of a mashup of 7 different businesses that I've seen operating or trying to operate in the space of AI and mental health. Mental health is a highly regulated industry, and for good reasons, right? We want lots of safeguards in place in that kind of a setting. But this is just a semi-hypothetical example of a company who wants to combine AI with licensed therapists to set up a chat service where users can practice anxiety coping strategies. This is among the various dangerous things in mental health, one of the lower risk things that you can be doing. But still, you're working with a population that, has some things that they're working on. And they're trying to use evidence-based strategies to work with the bot chat, practice these strategies. There's therapists overseeing several of the bots to try to ensure things don't go off the rails and that harms are minimized. And yeah, a human can intervene if needed. So here's how my office would analyze this situation hypothetically. So we would look at possible benefits to the state. Potentially, this could be a low-cost way, conceivably, for people to benefit and improve their mental health. On the other hand, there are potential harms if there's bad advice given, if human oversight fails, then that could be bad for people. And specifically, there are two regulatory vectors of action by which this company might face trouble. Consumer protection could become involved if an individual is hurt through a paid service. And therapists might be worried about how they will be held accountable for the AI's actions, considering that they're providing oversight. So if we saw an issue like this at our office, we would do an analysis and try to do a risk-benefit calculation and figure out what a reasonable way is to allow a novel business model like this to succeed in the state. So we could, for example, say, you know, we are never going to fully exempt people from consumer harms laws. That's a bad thing to do. But maybe we can give them a 30-day curing period to say, if anyone is somehow harmed by the service, we'll give you 30 days to try and address the issue yourself before heavy regulatory fines come down. As for therapists, they're regulated by the states through ethical codes and supervision. So we might write a contract to say that the therapist actually will not be held accountable for every action of the bot if the company has a reasonable safety structure in place, an internal protocol that they follow that is reasonably designed to mitigate harms. So this is an example to me of how my office would address an issue where there's legitimate regulation, a novel business model, and we need to find a way to allow them to operate without a regulatory uncertainty. Let's proceed. I think, given time, I took too long on that last slide. Let's skip this one. But if you are interested in regulatory mitigation, we've had people come from diverse industries talking about this, from education to land titling to data sharing to all kinds of industries. We're happy to work with you. You can decompose it into an easy 4-step process. You can just reach out to ai@utah.gov to begin the process. You can just reach out with an initial inquiry about potential relief. We'll do a consultation to understand what you need to be able to operate. We'll also consult with other relevant stakeholders to make sure we understand the totality of the situation as much as possible, and it can make a balanced decision. And then we can negotiate a contract with you to try to define a reasonable way for you to operate with a new, potentially beneficial business model. Okay, so that's the first function of the lab. The second one, and we keep switching which one is first, I apologize. But the other function of the lab is the learning agenda function. We operate what we're calling a learning laboratory. I'm an academic, I want what I'm in charge of to be called a laboratory. But really, this is a policy lab, not a scientific lab. We do use a lot of science in our thinking. But we are charged with doing deep dives on policy issues that may be relevant to the state, where the state might have to take legislative or regulatory action. That can be either to remove legislation that, or to modify and clear a path, or to stop business models that might be harmful from developing any further. And so we just wrapped up our first deep study issue, which was the use of AI in mental health, which is why it's on the top of my mind and I'm talking to you about it right now. You know, this is a very substantive AI issue in our area, and it will have a local impact. We have the scope to do this here in the state. We also have a lot of expertise regulating this subject, as well as multiple research universities and major companies that can provide a subject matter expertise to make sure that we are taking the right course here. And we think there's a lot of stakeholder support for the state taking action that is reasonably designed to increase access to safe behavioral health services now and over the next 10 years as technologies progress and people figure out which business models work and which don't. So over the last few months, we've engaged with hundreds and hundreds of experts from every angle of this problem that we could think of, and we just came to the legislature with 3 major kinds of recommendations for state action at this time. One, we believe that there have been some harmful applications that have, and they've been in the news, that have caused harm to people. There's a need for certain strengthening of consumer protection to ensure that bad actors cannot outcompete good actors in this state. Second, we have found that therapists and licensed professionals generally benefit from clear regulatory guidance because their licenses and livelihoods are on the line. So we are recommending that the state issue guidance about this. And then another huge issue is that if you really want to go into mental health and you are not a human who has a degree from a human university, there's no clear pathway to practice to work legitimately in this field. There's a bunch of overlapping regulations, and it's not clear how they all apply or if there is any way to operate legitimately. So we are recommending the creation of a safe harbor where if you comply with the best practices, and we've talked to so many smart people about what best practices constitute in developing and deploying software in situations like this, that you should have a shield both from certain kinds of state regulatory enforcement as well as an affirmative defense in case of a personal suit. So this is our recommendation. We think it clarifies the environment and gives legitimate actors a way to proceed and slows down bad actors. So anyway, is that the last slide we have? Oh, we have one more. Just so you know, we have just wrapped up our first deep dive. We have another learning agenda coming up. We're looking at topics. I put up just some ideas that I've been thinking about up there, but we are listening to stakeholders. If you want to, you can reach out to me personally or go to our website. We have a little form you can fill out. We'd be happy for you to lend your expertise and give us a consult on an issue that you think we ought to be paying attention to.